Hi, beautiful people. I hope you're doing great. I feel like I have such a nice backdrop. I have all my books behind me. Um, but it's one of my many collections that I leave around the world. So every time I come back to that place, I get so excited that I get to like read through some of these gems that I have accumulated over the years. I have my coffee here with me, and I actually just recorded like a little reel, but I wanted to dive a bit deeper into this topic because I went for a walk in the morning. And when you've been like thinking about something for a long time, and it's one of my favorite thing when like a new insight gets unlocked based on the things you've been thinking about consuming and curating. So I wanted to talk to you about something that I have just thought about for a long time. So, for a little bit of a context, I love podcasts. I love podcasts. I love reading. Um, I would like to believe that I like to read kind of multidisciplinary material just because I think the knowledge is multidisciplinary. So sometimes a new piece of insight gets unlocked in a completely different way. Um, that's why art is so important. Like you just go and see art, or you just go and watch a musical because something different can happen because it's connected to like an emotional state, at least for me. So speaking of podcasts, I love podcasts, but there's this one podcast in particular that I've been just loving consuming over and over again. And it's the Trevor Noah's podcast called What Now? I'm not going to talk extensively about who Trevor is and why I think you should know who he is. I think he's such a cultural phenomena because he brought an insight into the US politics, into the US context that hasn't been there before. And because he was a public figure and he was hosting a daily show for a while, I think people realized that the American experience isn't always centered around the world. And I think that was a bit of a wake up call for the US itself, but also for the rest of the world, that we can appreciate and indulge in stories that are unlike what we've known and what we've consumed. And honestly, it doesn't matter where you are, the American experience is still centered, whether it's in media, whether it's in film, whether it's in books. Obviously, unless you're actively searching for different material that is translated, that is easily available to where you come from. So, do your research about Trevor, but his podcast, What Now? Such an incredible place where, like, I always have different insights unlocked. I don't know what it is about that space, about the people that he brings, but I feel incredibly challenged and incredibly like eager to listen to it more. Like sometimes the podcasts are like 2 hours and I literally just listen to it at the gym. And sometimes I'm there for 2 hours because I want to listen to it. That's how like how much he's able to create this space of curiosity. Um so I just wanted to put it out there for a little bit of a context. He's an incredible storyteller. He is able to create like a backdrop, a context that makes you feel like you're in there, which all the good storytellers, I believe, do very well. And because of his like cultural background, he was born in South Africa. Um, he grew up in South Africa, but his dad is Swiss and his mom is Xhosa woman from South Africa. He also is a bit of a paradox in some ways because he moved to the US and he traveled extensively through his comedy show. He kind of like was able to like understand or wanting to understand the context that he is in. And he's that type of person that like would want to immerse himself in an experience even when he travels, which I love, and it resonated so much with me. Um, and I'm getting to the insight. Hold on with me. So he's an incredible storyteller, that's for sure. But what I believe he also possesses, which I think is so rare and so beautiful in some ways, is that he is an excellent story collector. He collects adventures and stories that he then turns into storytelling, then he turns into his gigs or podcasts or like sharing insights from his travels, all of those things. But he is an incredibly curious and inquisitive person who wants to have these unique experiences. And I wanted to talk about it for a little bit because I just, first of all, it resonates with me because I always have been trying to be a story collector. um and I kind of called it storytelling, and obviously the two are interconnected, and I love narrating other people's stories as well, but there's nothing that gives me greater joy than talking about things that have happened to me or the conversations that I've had with people that have inspired me or unlocked something new within me, like I'm doing here right now. So a storyteller, obviously, is someone who is able to narrate other people's stories really well or their own stories really well. But story collector is someone who goes out of their way to be curious about the world and everything that's involved within the world and try to understand it and try to conceptualize it and try to kind of like come up with different theories, and is has great critical thinking, is almost like a critic at large, where he's able to zoom out and connect the dots, almost like a system thinker. That's how I see a story collector. And what's a really beautiful thing about story collectors, and I think we can all kind of learn something from that, this perspective, this experience, is that you walk through the world like believing that you belong wherever you are, and you're constantly searching for something new to learn, for someone new to observe, for someone new to be introduced to. And I think you don't necessarily have to be an extroverted personality to be able to do that. You can kind of just like be in a room, like go and listen to different lectures and just like observe what people are talking about, or what observe like the type of patterns that are coming through. And you can always just like go back to your mind and like just think about it more deeply. But how beautiful is that? Like, imagine what would happen if we would actively and consciously go out of our way to collect and look for that stories and adventures that we can tell, then turn into stories that we can talk about around the dinner table or with our friends. And it doesn't have to be a big thing, it can be the smallest of thing, like I told you right now. um or it can just be, for example, like next time you have a coffee date with a girlfriend of yours, you can ask different type of question. It doesn't always have to be about what has happened to you, and obviously that's amazing, but I think the act of like gathering stories or like consuming different and new types of stories is also like asking better questions of the people that you already are with. Imagine the type of stories that people are hiding inside of themselves, but they're just not able to be unlocked because of a wrong question. I just think that is like my approach to conversation. I always want to know like what are people working on. That's I'll give you my three favorite questions that I always am asking of new people, old and new alike. First one is, what are you working on right now? Not necessarily anything to do with work. It can be to do with your profession, but it can also just be your hobby or your creative pursuit. So, question number one. Question number two might be a bit too extreme for some, but I'm the type of gal. What is a dream that you are actively pursuing that seems so far out of reach? I feel like that would make for such a beautiful conversation. And if you want to tone it down a little bit, the third question I always ask, or I try to kind of get into, is like, what is one thing that you think you're like really good at that you can turn into some type of service for your community? I love that question so much because we all have a gift or skill that comes super naturally to us. Doesn't we don't People always talk about monetizing it. If you want to, you can, of course. But I always try to look at the skill that I have that I'm naturally good at and see how my community can benefit from that. I think that is such a beautiful question. And it can kind of like unlock, again, a beautiful type of conversation. And with the third question, if you want to take it further, you can be like, how can I help to make it happen? Like, if someone tells you that they love cooking, um they don't really like indulge in it as much as they would like to, um then maybe you can create like a gathering of friends that every week you meet and your friend makes food and you watch your favorite movie. A community doesn't have to be directly connected to the challenges your community is facing. It's just simply how can you use your skill to bring people together. I think that is so beautiful and we need more of that. So, next time you meet with somebody or next time you go out into the world, look at stories, look at the type of stories you can collect. Even if it means like you go to a different city and you've never done a walking tour or you've never been to a museum or a gallery, go there and try to find out something about the city that you've never known about. And how beautiful and cool would that be to then take the story further, collect your story, and share that story with somebody else. I hope that is helpful. I hope that makes sense. I hope it's a framework you will use because I just love the distinction that we can kind of distinguish between a storyteller and story collector. So be a story collector, and then you have so many more interesting stories to tell. I love you. Have a beautiful week ahead, and I'll see you next week. Thank you. Bye.